And now, I will move on to today's message. We'll start with the first part of today's message. As I mentioned earlier, it is split into two parts, and in between, Barbara Williams, the chair of the Endowments Committee, will speak to us about their work for our congregation. But we'll begin with part one, which covers where the Celts and what is Samhain. First slide, please. Earlier, I told you that the origins for Halloween lie in Samhain. Samhain is the New Year celebration of the Celtic people. When we hear the Celts, we think of ancient Ireland and Scotland, but the Celtic world was more than that. In this map on the screens, you see Europe with a yellow area and green areas that are colored in. The yellow area located in Central Europe is where the Celts were thought to have originated from, on or about 1000 BC. They spread into the remainder of Europe and even into the British Isles and reached the height of their power by about the 3rd century BC. The map shows you the extent of their territories, which includes both green and yellow areas seen here. And it's certainly much brighter than I thought I'd find out. One of the interesting points for these people was that they did not possess a central government, but instead they were a collection of tribes bound by similar language, shared religious beliefs, traditions, and culture, which is very similar to what the Greeks did and what the Maya did in the Americas. In fact, Celts had no written language until about 600 AD. And prior to this, their history was passed down through oral traditions. This was mainly done by the Druids, their religious leaders. But because of the lack of a written language, many details of their earlier history is not known or is questioned, as it was written by conquering peoples, and its accuracy is at times questioned. Next slide. Here is the Celtic calendar. This one is drawn around 600 AD, actually. The only ones I think that they can find. The Celt year is divided into a dark half, consisting of fall and winter, and a light half, consisting of spring and summer. The new year began at the start of the dark half of the year, which for us falls on the night of October 31st, since it always starts the evening before the day of the actual happening. This was also known as Samhain. By this time, the harvest work was supposed to be completed and celebrations would ensue. It was said that at this time the veil or separation between the spirit world and the physical world was at its thinnest. Because their spirit world contained a pantheon of gods and other spirits such as sprites and fairies and monsters, these were thought to be able to cross over into our world on this night. In addition, departed family members were said to be able to cross back and visit living family members again on this night. Next slide. This is a rendering of a Samhain bonfire. Samhain, again, was a celebration of the New Year. It is said the bonfires were lit and people would gather to tell stories. At times, they would dress in animal skins and wear masks, supposedly to scare or confuse malevolent spirits and monsters that had crossed over from the spiritual world. Carving turnips into lamps and using embers as a light source and placing them outside the doors of their home, along with foodstuff, was done so that the spirits of family members could find their way back home and be welcomed. In addition, that lamplight from these turnips with embers in them, okay, I guess it's pretty dark, okay, compared to today, okay, was meant to keep those not-so-friendly spirits and monsters at bay. During this time, people were expected to present themselves to the local chieftain or king. In addition, divination, or foretelling of the future was done by the Druids mostly around this time. As religious leaders, their ability to connect with the spirit world was at its height at this time. They used these connections to provide information to people seeking future guidance and communications with their ancestors. Divination practices that have been reported include apple bobbing for help in love and marriage, casting lots using stones, sticks, or shells, or even casting of runes to gather answers to specific questions, scrying, which consisted of gazing into an item such as an open bowl with water or water mixed with oil, or gazing into a mirror or a fire, or even, if you can believe it, cabbage leaves and whole cabbage heads, okay, would allow communication with the departed, or give information of successes or dangers of upcoming endeavors. Fascinating. Oh, really? At the start of the Christian era, the Romans conquered a significant portion of the European continent, including parts of the British Isles. Although Celtic influence waned, people continued to follow and celebrate their Celtic beliefs, as the Romans did little to impose their belief system over the conquered peoples. That is, the but comes here, until 380 AD, when Christianity, officially known as Nicene Christianity, or specifically known as Nicene Christianity, became the official religion of the Roman Empire. And at that time, non-Christian pagan worship, as well as other forms of Christianity, including Gnosticism, Arianism, Nestorianism, became outlawed. In 597 AD, so about 200 years later, Pope Gregory I arrived in England to revive the Christian faith in the Britons. You see, when the Romans had withdrew from Britain almost a century before, they had reverted to more and more paganistic beliefs, not the Christianity that had been imposed. He set November 1st, at least in Britain alone, as All Saints' Day to coincide with Samhain and allow Christians to seek help from saints and family spirits on this night. Then, 2 centuries later, 731 AD, Pope Gregory III set November 1st as All Saints' Day throughout the Roman Empire. He also set November 2nd as All Souls' Day. All of this was done in attempts to turn Samhain into a Christian celebration. Let's take a break from Samhain and Halloween and hear from the Endowment Committee about their important work. And afterwards, we'll continue. Barbara Williams, please.
Thank you for that history. My name is Barbara Williams, and I serve this congregation as chair of the Endowment Committee. Now, the Webster Dictionary defines endowment as, quote, the act or process of furnishing an income, end quote. Not-for-profits such as universities, religious institutions, theater groups, lots of nonprofit organizations establish endowments as a way to offer stability, to communicate to the world, we are here to stay. 2 ways that our congregation sends out that message are the purchase and the remodeling of this particular building and the establishment of an endowment committee. When I look back at the most meaningful stewardship talks over my tenure as a 50-year member of this congregation, I recall one delivered by Tom Platt. He stated that he donates to this congregation because he believes in the need for a liberal spiritual presence in our predominantly conservative community. I too fill that need. My family came to South Bend in 1975 from Houston, Texas. In Houston, we had belonged to a Unitarian church because we felt the need to be in touch with folks that believed in things that we believed in: gun safety, the Great Boycott, ending the war in Vietnam, and objecting to the KKK Grand Wizard speaking at the Houston School Board meetings. In South Bend, when I came here 3 years after being in Houston, I promoted joining this particular congregation because I knew my views about teaching human and discussing human sexuality would not be rejected in this UU congregation. It was being rejected in the South Bend community. So back to the endowment community. Ours was established in 2008. It allows us to accept large and not so large donations from individuals and estates that, when invested with other UU congregational endowments, can provide a steady income for years to come. It is a way for individuals to leave a legacy and know that their monetary gift will continue to give long after it was received. Finally, it is a way for a congregation to use the earned interest to support special projects that might not be able to be included in our annual budget. In the past few years, earnings from our endowment have funded such wonderful projects as the enhanced sound equipment we enjoyed at our most recent concert, and will be improving the sound equipment we have in this room. It was used to rehab our nearly 100-year-old piano, to support the recent August congregational picnic that many, many people enjoyed, purchasing our owl, which allows for better communication when we have small group meetings and people are on Zoom. And it supported the 70th year anniversary celebration of the congregation a few years ago. On this Sunday's Day of Remembrance of the Dead, the All Saints' Day, the All Souls' Day, consider donating to our endowment fund in memory of someone special in your life, or in honor of someone who touches you in your life today. Also, as you prepare for updating or preparing your wills, consider including our endowment in your estate planning. I have some brochures that I put out just outside the door about what the endowment fund is and how it's used. And I also have donation envelopes that can be used at memorial services or funerals, allowing people to honor you in your memorial service or your funeral. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a better understanding of what the endowment is.
Thank you, Barbara. And now back to Samhain and how it became Halloween. Part 2. Okay. Next slide, please. Timeline 1 is a somewhat of a brief recap of what I've told you so far, some of the dates at least, and how that led to November 1 being named All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day. And a reminder that this was Christianity's efforts to absorb or wipe out popular pagan practices, such as Samhain, that were still celebrated. And we still celebrate somewhat today in a different way. But we're still not to Halloween, although we understand the importance of October 31st because that is the official beginning of the day for at least Celts. We haven't really figured out, or I haven't told you how we named it Halloween. The word hallow, when it's used as a noun, means a holy person or thing, and therefore All Saints' Day was also called All Hallows' Day. And since we know that Samhain began the evening before November 1st, being October 31st, that became known as All Hallows' Eve. which was later contracted in common language first as Hallows Eve, and subsequently, all waiting up to about 17 to 1800, somewhere around there, it became known as Halloween. So here we are, Halloween, how it's named and where it's at. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some of the things that are associated with Halloween, like witches and jack-o'-lanterns. Here's some images of them. What about witches? Now, witches and witchcraft had been written in literature going all the way back to 3000 BC in Mesopotamia. But it wasn't until the Christianization of Europe, and specifically after 380 AD, which led to pagan rituals being condemned and those practicing them labeled as witches or sorcerers. The early Samhain mention of witches comes about in around 900 AD. Still, it was not until the witch trials of the 15th to 17th centuries, which involved almost all of Europe along with the American colonies, that we come to what we currently see or visualize as witches and Halloween. What is sad to read is that during that time period, the 15th to 17th centuries, there were more than 100,000 people prosecuted, and about 60,000 of them were executed for being witches, most of them being women. Now, what about jack-o'-lanterns? Well, this is a modern story, if you can believe it. It was based on an Irish tale of the early 1800s of Stingy Jack, who twice tricked the devil. And if you read the stories, I just don't know how the devil was that dumb. But anyway, something about turning into a coin, crucifixes, up a tree, blah, blah, blah. I won't tell you the stories. But anyway, twice he tricked the devil. When he finally died, okay, took a long time, I guess, heaven would not accept him. Oh, duh, I wonder why. And when he tried to go down to hell, the devil said, no frickin' way am I putting you up with you again. All right? So the devil forced his spirit to wander the earth forever, carrying a lantern made of a carved turn. The turnips were popular, obviously, in there, which was lit from within, so that this light would warn living spirits of his spirit coming along, and at the same time, he can see the rest that his spirit would never get to. Now, of course, in America, turnips are either too small or non-existent. No, they're there, just not very popular. Pumpkins were very popular. Pumpkins were not that much of a deal back in European lands at that point. So here, they started taking pumpkins and carving them and using them instead of turnips. I had a picture of turnips with their faces, and I thought they looked pretty ugly, so I didn't put it up there. All right, so that's the jack-o'-lantern and the witches. Next slide, please. Dumb supper. We're not talking about unintelligent supper. We're talking about quiet supper, okay? Sometime in the later Middle Ages, the tradition of leaving foodstuff outside your home for family members to come and enjoy became known as dumb supper instead. So instead of leaving food outside, what people would do is leave their windows open that night to allow the spirits of family members to come in and join the family at dinner with their own plate setting and food placed at the table, and even desserts such as cakes left out for them to enjoy. So until the Middle Ages, we didn't really quite follow that, but it's an interesting change. Next slide. Trick-or-treating. It is believed to have begun in the Middle Ages, known as souling, where children, and poor people, by the way, also did this, would go around on Samhain and get soul cakes, sweet cakes basically, for doing prayers for the dead. Now, why do prayers for the dead? Well, prayers for departed family members had been encouraged by the Christian church. It was believed that most of the dead initially sat in purgatory due to the fact that all human beings are sinners. You sinners, you. But they would be able to enter heaven once they have purged themselves of these remaining sins. And you can help them by praying for them, by asking the saints to pray for them. So having other people do the praying for you even made it better. And therefore, this became a popular thing to do in the Middle Ages. Things went on, and in the mid to late 1800s, in Scotland and Ireland, guising, short for disguising, via using of costumes, became popular. The event was secular in nature and not religious like souling, but it consisted of activities such as songs, jokes, or tricks said on Halloween night in exchange for food, drink, or money. Next slide, please. Here's another timeline. Lots of stuff on there, but this covers Halloween's appearance in America. Let's talk about that. It is now the 1800s, 1840 to 1870, and there were large migrations of Irish and Scottish peoples. Again, you've heard of the potato blight as part of that problem. It was basically an economic issue that was going on for them. They moved here. With them, they brought the tradition of Samhain and Halloween. In America, because pumpkins, again, not turnips, were easily accessible, they became associated with the celebration. Halloween, as a Scottish celebration, is even mentioned in a newspaper in 1852. It's the first mention of Halloween in the Americas. In the very early 1900s, guising was reported to be happening in America, and at that point now consisted of children dressing up in costumes on Halloween and going around performing short acts for treats. Next slide. Timeline 3, final timeline, which will cover the rest of the history there. From the 1910s through the 1930s, newspaper coverage of Halloween activities with its costumes, trick-or-treating, and jack-o'-lanterns popularized the activity. But all was not well. There were increasing reports of vandalism occurring on Halloween night. And starting in the 1940s, mostly local, but government basically got involved with the encouragement of safe Halloween activities, such as scheduled trick-or-treating, which, by the way, actually further popularized this activity. I tell you, I usually block those people very quickly. But anyway, all right. So the government's getting involved trying to make it safer actually made it even more popular. But capitalism wasn't too far behind to get into the act. The candy industry had had an explosive growth following World War II when sugar became easily and cheaply available. In the 1950s, the candy industry decided to target Halloween, pushing the convenience of these treats. Now, treats before this had been made with, were homemade with fruits, nuts, and even small toys. And because of cost, people still didn't really get into buying commercial candy, not until the 1970s and 1980s, when candy became extremely popular. And after 1980, commercial candy became almost exclusively what people gave out. Why? Because there were the urban legends of dangers in items being given to trick-or-treaters, like needles and apples, blades and apples. I remember hearing that when I was a kid, and I was like, why would anyone do that? Stuff still tasted good. But anyway, around this time, 1970 to 1980s, adults began celebrating Halloween, or at least became popular enough for people to do that, and the wearing of costumes became very popular. So from then on, it has only spread and enlarged, shall we say, from Samhain to Halloween. And through today, the popularity of the celebration continues to grow and spread to other parts of the world, mostly through the dominance of American culture. Thank you. And now, oh, you can just do the little flowers if you want. Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to go ahead and go to the offering. We have a special offering today. We ask for your help with offerings for this congregation to be